Okay, now we are live. So, hello everyone. Thank you for attending our event today. My name is Odette, and I'm a student at the University of Saskatchewan. So, I'm accompanied here by Kenneth. He's the CEO and founder of Career in Tech, which is a company based in Vancouver. I'm here in Calgary, and I'm also here with Chloe, and she's part of People and Culture Lead. So we're very thankful and grateful that we're having this session on a Friday. We know that lots of people are burnt out and also tired of online, but it really makes a difference. And I really hope that all of you, your knowledge will be enriched for today's session. Kenneth, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you very much for that. And my name is Kenneth. I'm the founder, CEO of Career in Tech Society. We are a nonprofit organization that helps people develop their career in the tech sector. I'm very thank you the team and also the speakers today, Chloe and Gloria later on, sharing their knowledge and experience in the tech sector to to people that are interested in this. Like, thank you very much. And I'll pass the mic back to Odette and Chloe to start the section. Thank you very much. Enjoy your section today. Thank you.
Okay, Chloe, you can take it on from here.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Odette. I'm going to see if I can share my screen. Okay, hopefully you guys can see this. So hello, everyone. My name is Chloe. Pleasure tuning in from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan here. And I'm excited to kind of walk everybody through the session. So today I'm going to be giving you some tips and tricks on how we can get your foot into the door and get involved here in the tech industry. So here's our agenda. I have a 20-minute presentation, and then we'll open up to see if there's any questions from the crowd, and or if not, then Odette and I can have a conversation. And then I'm gonna talk about what it's like having good resumes and how to get your foot in through the door. So it doesn't seem like it loaded properly, but a little bit about me. My name is Chloe. I currently am the People and Culture Lead here at CoLabs. A little bit about my background. I actually started out going to Simon Fraser University and enrolling in the BD School of Business. And then life sometimes gets the best of you. And then I transferred back here to the Edwards School of Business and eventually graduated with a Bachelor of Commerce degree in marketing. And now I currently lead People and Culture here at CoLab. So if you want to stay for a little bit later, kind of maybe towards the end, I can talk about like my transition of how I went from a marketing background to a people and culture role. And I also left my LinkedIn here. So if you want to connect with me afterwards, please feel free to do so. So a little bit about CoLabs and who we are. We're a independent nonprofit organization. And what we do is we work with high potential and high performing founders to take their technology from an idea all the way to $1 million in annual recurring revenue in under 3 years with a smart cap table. And being a nonprofit organization, we don't charge any fees and we don't take any equity from the companies that we work with. And but in return, we're incredibly selective of the companies that we work with. So a little bit about what we've achieved in the last 3.5 years of existence in terms of total cumulative revenue generated from all of the companies in our program, just a little bit shy of the 25 million mark. We've also worked with over 133 different startups, as well as over 300 different founders. And collectively, they have raised from venture capital $17.3 million. And we played a big part in economic development by creating just a little bit over 400 new jobs in the last 3.5 years. So a little bit about our program. So like I mentioned in our mission statement is to work from anywhere from an idea all the way taking companies to $1 million in annual recurring revenue. And how we do that is through our 4 levels of programming. So here are 4 levels of programming caters to any stage of an entrepreneur's journey. So whether you're coming to us very early stage, where we've seen people say like, when I was in elementary school, I ran a lemonade stand, all the way to like pressing buttons, printing t-shirts, anything like that. As long as they have that entrepreneurial spirit, we have a program to help them. So then we ideally see this as kind of a funnel. So at the very top of that is Co-Learn, where we help high potential talent get their start in tech. So equipping them with the necessary toolkits to get their foot in through the door and get started on working with an idea. And once they do have an idea and they start building a prototype, then we recommend that they go into our next stage of programming, which is called co-launch, which is a accelerator program. So similar to a semester of work. It's 12 weeks of programming. So we run them through acceleration. And at the end of that, we run a pitch event and give away $20,000 in non-dilutive funding. And this is for companies who are in the idea and prototype stage. And then eventually, if they graduate from there, or if you're coming to us from a different field, so saying like you're already working on a startup, you can directly come to us and enroll in one of our resident programs. So these are the Co-Link and Co-Lead. So Co-Link is our incubation program where we work with validated tech startups to really build their market traction as well as their team size. And once they get to a mark where they're ready to attract outside venture capital money, then they can move on to our final stage of programming, which is our scale-up program called Co-Lead. And Co-Lead is to scale up. And then you see news nowadays of like, say, for example, like WeWorks raise X $million. That's ideally where we would like to see our companies progress in 3 years. And then we release them into the ecosystem. So that was a mouthful. Like, how do we accomplish that? And like, how does Collabs work? So with Collabs, our 3 pillars are mentorship, programs, and community. I'm obviously a little bit biased because I personally think the most important part is this ecosystem that we're building here in Saskatchewan. I'm not sure where everybody else is watching, but I am based in Saskatchewan, and that is where Collabs is. And we primarily focus on helping SaaS-based startups. So the community portion it's really difficult. We recognize it's really difficult building a tech startup. It's niche. Sometimes you talk to your friends who are building brick and mortars, and they might not know like the struggles that you're facing. So we're trying to build a community of people who have been through what you've been through to kind of help raise each other up and to provide a support system, as well as them being able to give back in the components of mentorship, as well as then working in conjunction with the 4 levels of programs that we offer. So I guess for people who are watching, who are not sure, maybe are just kind of interacting with tech for the very first time, like what exactly is tech? So I just want to drop a little bit of knowledge for everybody here. So what the tech? So tech comes in 2 forms that we primarily, the audience knows as, is primarily their software. So these are like your Airbnb, Zoom, Skip the Dishes, Uber Eats, Uber, you name those. So those are the ones where primarily you're using like some sort of app or a web browser to access their software. That's their product. Or it could be a hardware. So hardware, a lot of it we're referring to, like right now, the darling of the tech industry here is like, for example, electric vehicles has always been a very, very hot topic, or other things that you don't see very often, but there is a market for that. And so here in Saskatchewan, we're very big on agriculture. So ag tech is definitely one of those for us. So for example, farming equipment also falls into that category of hardware. So other types of tech, and you can see them as you usually try to just take the industry that they're in, and then you add the word tech behind it. So for example, there's education tech, and we call that ed tech. And then there's clean tech, about like how do we recycle better? How do we keep our environment a little bit more sustainable? And then you also see like banking apps that are popping up, and we call that finance tech, where right now short for fintech. And there's just many, many more. So tech is a very, very broad industry, and it's an exciting place to be. So in short, software is eating up the world, and it really is. Like, we see this on the news all of the time, and this seems to be the booming industry after oil and gas and some of the more traditional industries that we're very used to here. So now I really want to dive into like what makes a good resume and how do you get a job in tech. So what are hiring managers looking for? So we kind of start off. So you're really interested and you want to get your foot in the door. How do we start? Traditionally, we always start with the resume. So it's really important to make the resume your own. So making sure that it's a reflection of who you are and you can portray your personality. So I always recommend going to free resources such as myperfectresume.com. It's a free resource for you to go to. You can upload from your traditional black and white and you can make it look more colorful. And it really does a great job of keeping it concise because I do a lot of hiring and sometimes you get a lot of resumes. And here in tech, we're very big on not using filtering software. So a real live person is probably looking at your resume, and it's really important to keep it concise because surveys say that on average, a recruiter looks at your resume for only about 6 to 7 seconds. So what can you do to make yourself stand out from everybody else is keeping it concise, making it a one-pager. So kind of everybody, it's easy to direct your eyes. So you can kind of look back and forth and make sure it's directed to the company that you're hiring for. So if some terms on there, for example, you can draw from the job posting. So if it says values teamwork and collaboration, making sure to include keywords like that in your application. And then obviously triple check for spelling and grammar because that's always very important. So here's an example of what it's like looking at that I drew from my perfect resume. So you can pick different colors that represents you. You kind of like at a glance will show all of your different skill sets. And it's just a really kind of nice way to capture all of that information on one page. So the recruiter or the headhunter can just at a glance see if you're a good fit or not. So I know this is a really big debate, and people always, like in my industry here, we always talk about, should we include a cover letter with your resume application? And the answer to me is always yes. And the reason for that is because this is your chance to make yourself stand out, right? Like, so if you have a quirky personality, or if you want to be able to show that and you can't show it in your resume because a resume is really just a tool to really kind of list all of your qualifications and see if you are a good fit, a cover letter can go and help recruiters dive a lot deeper into whether or not you might be a good fit for them. So for an example of a cover letter here is to mention any core values or anything that's listed in the job posting. So for example, I drew from here is, you can see it says, you can often find me on a company's social committee or pitching ideas to leadership about how to make every experience an 11 for it. I love finding ways to support my teammates, such as like organizing coffee gift cards during mental health week. So in here, the kind of big component underneath my browser is coming here is, so for this company in particular, their core value is making every experience an 11, and being able to kind of take from the job posting and to tailor it to the company that you're applying for are definitely some big brownie points that you would be winning when you put your application in front of a recruiter. So now, if everything looks good there and you did all the necessary prep and you get contacted for an interview, what do you do? So some preparation going into it is to get inside a hiring manager's brain. So here in the tech industry, and I can't speak for every other company, but particularly here at Colabs, but we are, again, not a complete representation of the market because we are a nonprofit and we're a tech incubator. So we're not a startup. So you kind of have to take that into consideration. But every single tech company and tech leaders that I have spoken with, one of the big things is right off the bat, they look for culture fit. So seeing if you align with their core values, whether you're going to be a good fit for that, and then kind of figuring out like what are some attributes that you bring to the table that aligns with the company you're interviewing for. And at the end of the interview, it's remember, I think going into an interview, it's not one-sided. It's definitely the company is trying to learn about you, the candidate, but similarly, it's also an opportunity for you to learn about the company. So there's tons of articles that are out there that interviews are a two-way street. It's not just one way. So at the very end, every single interviewer will leave time for questions. And really, this is your time to get to know the company. So ask questions. Never say, I don't have any questions. That's always a red flag to say that you're not curious and you don't want to learn about the company. And like companies themselves are curious and want to know why you want to work for them as opposed to another company. And so ask questions, show that you're interested. Some fun questions that I always get is asking about like, what's a day in the life of your job? And being able to get a realistic job preview of that is just so important. When you now kind of sit down, and right now it is a jobs market. There's so many choices, and the candidates have so many, they can pick and choose which one. So make sure you ask questions and differentiate which company you ultimately want to work for if you get multiple offers. So some questions that get asked in an interview would be like this. So what kind of team do you want to surround yourself with? And when you craft your answers, always make sure that you include and show that you have done your research on the company you're applying for. So mentioning what their core values are, kind of giving some examples of like how you relate. So for example, that I listed here is I enjoy a very collaborative environment and a place where there is high value placed on trust. I know one of your core values is default to trust, and this is something I can take from my previous role. I make it a high priority to meet deadlines that the team has agreed with, and folks can trust me to go above and beyond. So that's just an example for you to refer to when you're crafting your answers. So after an interview, and now you wait and say you don't get the results that you want, always ask for feedback. I feel like that's always so important. Even though you feel discouraged that you didn't end up getting the position, it's just so important to ask, like, what can you do to improve? Like, constructive feedback will only make you stronger. And I know some companies don't offer it in the first initial stages, but feel free to reach out, reply to that rejection email and ask them, say, hey, like, can you tell me like what I can do to improve going forward? And here at Collabs, we're very big on that. So always being able to provide it, and especially important if you get to say like the second stage or the third stage, like always ask like, why didn't I get picked? So you can work on some of those skills going forward. And remember, feedback is fuel for the future. Okay, so how do you set yourself apart? And my meme didn't seem to kind of go forward, but oh, it did. Okay, awesome. So how do you set yourself apart? And I know it's really difficult when you're just kind of looking at paper applications. Like, I don't know who this person is like. I don't know what their personality is like, and you can only make inferences. So try to do your best on making yourself stand out as much as you can throughout this process. So I guess some personal tips I would say is fine-tune your LinkedIn profile, because people are looking. LinkedIn now is seen as kind of your online resume. So if you're active in the space, if you post, if you react, we can see all of that. And as recruiters, we're also very interested in like who you are as a person, not just what you've written down on paper, right? Like we want to know like what your personality is like, what are your interests? Because at the end of the day, we're more than just employees in a company. We're all unique individuals that all have our own unique goals as well as interests. So making sure that you fine tune your LinkedIn to really reflect who you are as a person. And another takeaway I want to leave with everyone here in this space is networking actually works. I was in business school and I really brushed this off when I was in school and being told that you should go to networking events. These are really useful. These will get your foot in through the door. And I was like, nah, I don't think this is for me. I'm just going to do the traditional route, just like apply to jobs that are posted online. But I've been working here for 3.5 years now, and really safe to say the tech industry is quite small. So no matter where you are located geographically, there's a chance that we're all kind of connected in some sort of way. Like, never disregard that. So make sure you put yourself out there and network. Like, I've been to so many of these talks where my fellow panelists, we all encourage this. Like, it does work. I know in school, when you're a student, you don't think it does, but once you get into the real world, this does set you apart sometimes in some scenarios. So some tips that I want to leave everybody with is get started now. I know you might be, whoever you're watching, you might be in your first year, you might be in your second year, you might be in your third year, you might be in your fourth year, you might be in a different industry looking to make a transition. Don't wait to build those connections, right? You can't just like wait. It's like, oh, I want to switch, or crap, I'm going to graduate in about 4 months and I should probably start looking for a job. You have to start building those relationships early. So how do you do that? Get involved. So wherever you are located, you can go to Eventbrite, do a search. You can do like some keywords, for example, like tech. probably a big one. Or like some sort of, if you're in marketing, you can maybe look up the word like marketing. Or if you like doing sales, you can look up sales. And if you're like into development, like anything technical, or you might look up like coding, on all of that, and come out to those. I know it's really, really scary coming to an event by yourself, but what I've realized is that's where a lot of people are making their connections and getting their foot in through the door. So some events I listed here, if you are located here in Saskatchewan, is here at Collabs, we host monthly community events. Right now they are in, because of COVID, they are on a virtual setting, but we do have a software program that we use that will facilitate and accommodate for networking. So that's kind of like a good idea, like at the beginning, right? Like you're afraid that you come and you're just by yourself and you didn't have any friends, but now we're all sitting in front of a computer by ourselves. So maybe that's the way you can start getting yourself ready to transition into that. And then other ones that I listed here was Vendasta, which is a really big company, tech company here in Saskatchewan. They run a Ideas on Tap. So they will do like different focused talks. So sometimes they'll talk about marketing, sometimes they'll talk about sales, sometimes they'll talk about product, or like any other topic that really comes to mind. And they usually have speakers coming up to that. So there's always food involved. I feel like that's probably like a really kind of like nice incentive that you won't go hungry going to any of these events. And then another one I listed here is Shaken at a Twist, which is a female-focused event. And really what you're trying to do at these events is to build your personal brand. Like, how do you make yourself stand out from everybody else? Like, you could come in and you can, I know it's really I know it's like really intimidating. So like my tips are, and I may seem like I'm a really people-focused person, but I get terrified going to events where I don't know a lot of people, and I set some goals for myself. So for example, it could just be two things. It could be like, okay, I am going to talk to 2 people and introduce myself and tell them like, why am I here? And that could be good enough. That could be good enough for just the event there. So, and then you kind of gradually build that. So like, for example, with some events that are more recurring, like making sure you come out to just more than one of those, and to like follow up with people you recognize. Be like, hey, Jim, I met you. And remember, I'm Chloe. And we talked about like how the weather was completely like really wonky or something like that. And people like start remembering, they're like, oh yeah, I totally remember this person. So make sure you build your brand awareness of like your personal brand of who you are as a person. And we've seen so many jobs, people getting jobs that way. It's just they came out to an event, they started talking to people, and then that person recommended them to another person, and then eventually then they worked for another person. But it was all because that person had come out to an event or that person had put themselves out there. So I wanted to leave everything here. I'm not sure what happened to my photo kind of there, but here are my details if you would like to connect with me. I don't bite. And I'm really willing to help anybody who is interested in getting involved here in tech. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Chloe. If you don't mind, I have a few questions for you.
Yeah, go for it.
Anybody might be wondering about these questions. So, for example, since you look at resumes, what like common feedback do you give to people that don't get the job?
So I feel like for people who, so here at Collabs, we're really big on respecting others. So for example, if that person is a no for us, that doesn't mean they're a no for another company. And we've always been very transparent by telling people that, hey, I know it didn't work out with us because that's not what we're needing, but we do know someone in our networks, and let us know if you feel comfortable with us sharing your resume, because chances are, because we interviewed you, we saw something in you, and we have a lot of credibility. So once we share that with other people, then they are, that'll increase the chances of that person going to work for a different company, but still being in our ecosystem. So I would say for people who don't get recognized, usually they just don't put enough information on their resume. I think that's kind of like one of the big ones is like, I'll look at a resume and nothing, and I can tell like in about 5 seconds that this person has just decided to just click apply without even like amending them. So like we've seen there's ones where there's like even no like relevant skills at all. They're like 10 years of experience teaching in an elementary school. And I'm like, tell me why you want to get involved. Because none of this really says like wanted to do that. So that's why I really encourage people to write a cover letter, because cover letters are a really great resource for you to kind of cover that gap. So like, for example, if that person who has been working in education for 10 years, if they had written in their cover letter that, you know, maybe they had like a life incident that had happened and now they're like super inspired and they just want to get really involved, and just articulating that so we get a little bit more context, as opposed to us just looking at a resume that has no cover letter attached to it and it's super generic and we're like, we don't really know why this person wants to work for us. So always make sure to include a lot of information and to kind of spice it up a little. Like I always like to put like a joke, or like I really appreciate it when people have like quirky writing styles, or like, attention. And then it's like, okay, now I have your attention. Here's why I want to work for you. Like here in tech, we're really big on personalities, and I can speak for every single company in our program that ultimately we want to know who you are as a person. So please do your best to articulate and translate that into your application.
That's a great answer. To touch upon that, Chloe, would you say kind of adding maybe hobbies to your resume is a good thing? Maybe at the very end that makes you stand out. I don't know if you're looking for, or should we really think about if that might be relevant, or the fact that maybe it might just make you stand out is a good thing?
I think ultimately your application is a reflection of who you are as a person. So if you're like incredibly proud of a hobby that you've just been working on for a long time, like you just love electric guitars and you like collect them, or you play in a band, like let us know, because that's a reflection of who you are as a person. And like that translates more to as a skill. So like if you say you play in a band, then for us to say, oh, that's teamwork and collaboration right there, right? You have to kind of think of it more than just like, I put it on there. Or maybe, for example, like here, if you're working with startups are very big on looking for generalists. So if you have like an array of different skills, so like say you're a lifeguard and you like playing in a band and you also like volunteering, and like all of that to us, this says like, oh, this is a very personable person who really enjoys and like has a greater cause. And when you work for the tech industry, a lot of people are super passionate about what they do. And so we're looking kind of for that passion. So list it. I would say it would never hurt to give us a preview of who you are as a person as well. So especially, for example, if you're applying for like a technical role, right? Like if you're just going to code, and like, how do I differentiate you from the next person who's going to do that, right? And like, you also have to look at what are the trainability of this person and promotability too as the company gets bigger. So for example, if like we have a developer and we always actually ask, it's like, what do you like doing in your free time? We just want to know who you are as a person. And if like a developer says, it's like, I love woodworking, or I love DJing, or that kind of thing, like that says, it's like, oh, this person, you know, has a lot of attributes that could build towards something else. So I feel like I always like seeing when there's a lot of personality. And when you're working in tech, it's a really interesting industry where you can afford to have a little bit more fun. The industry is a lot younger. The people who are working in here are a lot younger. And so being able to kind of portray that in your application will make you stand out from the crowd.
And
Awesome,
just one last question. So like during this pandemic, I guess there could be some students here and they felt like they haven't done a lot of opportunities. So do you think the networking events would kind of help get them out the door even without the experience?
Yeah, I think the way that you have to think about it this way is you have to look at exposure. So I recently interviewed a person that came to one of our previous events, and it was because I was in the virtual networking and I got shuffled and I sat at her table and we just talked really briefly. But like just about 10 seconds, but like I saw her name, and then I later saw she applied for a co-op position, and I gave her an interview because I remember seeing her name. And you would be very surprised as to how many event organizers go after the event is over and they just scroll through the registrations of like who came out for what. And that's also a great way for you to get your foot in through the door too. So for example, like you came out to this and then you connected with me on LinkedIn and then you sent me a note. Sometimes people don't reply because they're super busy or just gets lost in their inbox. But knowing like if they do come to look and they can make that connection, that's just kind of the world that we're currently living in. So just get yourself to these as many as you can. And like, even if you like are really shy, but I feel like virtual events are super great in the fact that you can just like drop a in the chat and someone's looking at it, I always look at the chat of like who came out to our events, even like didn't say anything like very memorable, but like, for example, like we always ask like, where's everybody tuning in from? And like somebody typing their name and I see them like, oh, this person has come out to like 4 of our events in a row, and then say they come and they apply for a position. Like I would be interested in knowing that they already got involved. So don't discredit that even now we're living in a virtual world.
Okay, great, thank you. It looks like we have a few questions from the Q&A, and I think you might have touched upon this, but Michael asked, so he was told that they should be, in regards to resumes, they should be simple black and white, because most resumes enter through a system and the system doesn't always catch the colors in a resume. Is a basic resume not the greatest?
So I would say for this might be industry specific, but here in the tech industry, unless you're applying for a company that you look on LinkedIn or you do your research and they have like over 500 people, that those companies are more likely to use a filtering software. But here in the tech industry, and especially with how fierce competition is, chances are there is a team of people who are reviewing them one by one. So it's totally your call of what you think works best. So if you want to stick with the black and white one, just still making sure that it's concise and maybe it's a one pager and it's easy for the eyes to kind of follow along. So a recruiter can get all of the information they want within those 10 seconds of looking at it.
Okay, great, thank you. We have another question coming in here from Rachel. I'll show them up here. So what are the competitive advantages that Saskatoon has in the tech industry? And number 2, are any tips when someone goes to a networking event, either in person or I guess currently more so online?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Rachel, for the question. So the competitive advantage about Saskatoon being in tech is it's a younger, emerging ecosystem. So whereas you see in Vancouver or Toronto, where there's a lot of super, super big players, and then the gap is really big between them, they have like the really tiny startups that are just starting out. So I would say that is one of the advantages. Another one that you hear about all the time, if you ever Google like Saskatchewan tech ecosystem, is the cost of living here is a lot lower. So where if you go to San Francisco and say you have $1 million to work with in terms of your operating budget, like your burn rate of how fast you use that money is a lot faster because you have to pay higher wages, there's higher rent costs and all of that. Whereas in Saskatoon or in Saskatchewan in general, the cost of living and all of the wages are a lot lower. And it's also a really, I think, a competitive advantage is because the industry is still emerging and it's in its earlier stages, is get your foot in, you can get in really early. So we've seen so many key hires in our startups where they actually just were hired like fresh out of school and they didn't particularly have any like skill sets, but they had like the founders who saw them had a lot to believe is like, this person's really hardworking, or this person's really passionate, or this person's just really personable and can get and extract a lot of information out of people and then build on those skill sets. I think that's fine as well, right? I think you don't necessarily, and one thing I think that you see in this entire tech industry is a lot of people actually are in a position where they didn't go to school for that. So at the beginning for me, I kind of touched on that briefly, was I have a marketing degree, but I'm doing an HR role now. And that just kind of naturally progressed as I kind of worked my way through. And that's totally fine too. I think that's probably my biggest takeaway for the first question. And then for the second one, going to a networking event is come with some like tools in your toolkits. So who you are, why you're here, and then just ask questions. I feel like just listen and ask questions. I think that's always important. I was never a really good networker, but some skills I picked up along the way is to introduce yourself and then say something that they will remember you for. So for example, one thing that I did really well when I went to school in Vancouver was because I'm from Saskatchewan, we have a term for hoodies and it's called a bunny hug. So that was always my key takeaway to them is to say, hi, my name is Chloe. I'm a business student at the BD School of Business. And I'm from Saskatchewan. And fun fact, we call hoodies bunny hugs here. And like people always just remember me for that. And people come back and are like, hey, bunny hug girl. And I'll be like, yeah. And that's like me achieving what I have come to like, is to for them to remember. So like always try to kind of stray away from having those really generic kind of small talk. It's like, oh, you talk about the weather or you talk about like your favorite sports team, but like making sure you're interested in like what they're saying. And then always then afterwards, like making sure you connect with them, even this on LinkedIn or sending them an email, say like, hey, hi, it's Chloe. We met at event X and it was super nice meeting you when we talked about this. I look forward to seeing you at another event. Like that goes such a long way. And I used to just kind of like shrug that off when I was in school, but like now being in the real world, seeing how well that has just worked and how people really appreciate notes like that just goes a long way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think we have one last question. Sorry about that.
Nope, all good.
Our last question. You've been doing so great with your answers, by the way. Do you think the length of a resume, here, I'll show this. Do you think the length of a resume has a great impact on getting a job?
Honestly, for if you're kind of wanting to get into tech, it depends on the size of the company and the culture that they have. Like we get like different lengths all the time. It doesn't really deter me. But if you can be more concise, so like if say you have 10 years of experience and you don't list something from like your high school days, it's like I worked as a cashier at McDonald's, like that's not relevant. Just try to put as much of relevant information on your resume to the job that you're applying for is sufficient enough.
All right, perfect. Thank you. And I think that is the kind of the end for the questions and answers for this session. Thank you again, Chloe. We really appreciate you attending our career event and speaking in regards to resumes for this session.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, everybody stay tuned. I also have a part 2 coming up, so I'll see you in a bit.
Perfect, thank you. Alrighty, so our next session, actually, we'll have a guest speaker, actually someone I personally know and I went to school with. Our next session is with Gloria Atieno, and she will be talking about her experience this past summer. This is especially relevant currently. I know it's been a bit challenging the past year, kind of getting an internship or a co-op opportunity as well, especially competing with a lot of people perhaps in your session, your cohort. And she'll speak towards her experience as well as her position this past summer as an intern at a tech company in a people and culture role. And I will invite her shortly to the stage. Thank you.
Hi.
there.
This is so different, but I think it's the same as Zoom and Google Meets. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay.
And you look, we can hear you and you look great.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
It's Friday, right? So after this, I have to leave the house and go do something fun.
Oh, wow. Well, we really appreciate your time and, of course, having you here as well.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Just let me know when you want me to begin.
Yeah, definitely. You can go ahead and delve right in about your probably kind of actually, Gloria, sorry, everyone, has kind of written a bit of a blurb as well on LinkedIn, kind of about your experience. And yeah, you can go ahead and explain as well.
Okay.
That would be great.
Okay, so Faith and myself, we went to George Brown College doing human resources management. So that was a certificate program, which is 1 year, and I started in September and finished in August. So from September to August, you kind of have to find your internship by yourself, but also the school gives you opportunities through their website to find internships with companies that they have partnership with. It's very hard because our program had to go online when it was actually supposed to be delivered in person. So now you're dealing with the stress of doing school online and then also trying to find an internship, competing with the people who graduated before you and they couldn't get an internship because everything closed down. So that process, it was very stressful, discouraging, and just your self-esteem is basically at the bottom because you're trying to find an internship to graduate. Because if you don't find one, you don't graduate. So my experience was very rough. If I eventually got an internship, but the process from the beginning to the end was very gruesome, basically. So what I did was I applied to probably 200 co-op opportunities. And of those 200, I probably got maybe 10 interviews and maybe 5 job offers. But then again, everyone's different. I didn't have HR experience. I have a background with customer service and all these different experiences in the jobs that I've done. So in order to get an internship, you kind of have to have some sort of experience that will help you stand out. Like Chloe said, you have to make sure you put something in your resume that makes you stand out. Like, why do you want to work for us? Right. And in order to do that, she said, write a cover letter. And speaking from someone who's gone through resumes, if you don't hit us with why you want to work right in the first maybe 2 lines, your resume is just going to on to the next. So that probably helps me understand why my resume was probably not chosen, because in the beginning, I didn't have the HR experience. I didn't understand how to organize my resume in a way that it'll catch the recruiter's eye. So through the courses I took at George Brown, I learned different things on how to organize my resume in order to stand out. And towards the end is how I managed to find all these job offers that I wouldn't have received if I didn't have the knowledge I gained from George Brown and the certificate program. So after applying to about 200 jobs, I would say you have to know exactly what you want to do. If you don't know what you want to do, you're basically just going to be throwing resumes just in order to get a position. And you have to know that whichever company you apply for, make sure your values align with the organization. Therefore, you'll be able to cater your cover letter and your resume in a way that shows the recruiter that, yeah, I want to work here, choose me. So in terms, long story short, my experience was really rough, but it's the resiliency. And if you keep applying, believe in yourself, believe that you have a value and you have something to add to whichever company you're applying for, and also be stingy. So don't just apply everywhere, but be picky with who you apply to and who you choose as your employer, because you want to work somewhere that you're excited to go to work every day. You don't want to wake up every morning and be like, oh my God, I have to go to work today, right? So that's why you have to make sure where you're applying aligns with your values and you want to work there, and make sure your resume fits the job that you're applying to. And advice I would give in terms of making the experience better is network, talk to your classmates, ask them to look over your resume. Even if you think it's amazing, make sure you get someone else to take a look at it, because you might have missed maybe one spelling, the wording is off, or you kind of miss saying an experience that maybe is outstanding that you overlooked. So yeah, I think I talked too much. Was that okay, Faith?
No, it was definitely great.
Okay.
In particular, thank you so much. I guess I was kind of curious too, in regards to the position that you held, and I guess what stood out that was the most fun, or what kind of experience you got from your internship that you think will be valuable moving forward in your career trajectory.
Okay, so that wonderful day that I received that I got my internship and I'll be graduating. So that was in May. So basically at the deadline of when you're supposed to submit your internship, I was like, I'm blessed. So basically I started applying in January, as I said, and I got my internship literally in May when it was the deadline. So I got my internship at Toolbox, which is a contact company. It's basically they deliver construction supplies on demand, almost like Uber Eats. So you order your construction supplies. Did I say that right? Yeah. You order supplies and then they get delivered on demand within a 2-hour window. So this company is remote first. So basically you work from home full time. So my role is a people and culture intern, and I was working with a team of one other individual. And then towards the end of my internship, there was another employee. So it was a team of 3. So very, very small. And the company is pretty scaling. So right now there are about 70 employees. When I got there, it was about 50 to 60 employees. So really small, and everything's online. So we're using Slack, we're using Google Suite. The role was very relaxed because I'm used to a very corporate, suit and tie kind of environment. But in the tech industry, it's very relaxed. It's like a little family. So that was very different for me because I'm used to kind of like order red tape everywhere. But this was just more like you come to work, everyone's super friendly, everyone's available if you need to ask them any questions. There's a lot of different tech. So in the tech industry, I find that they're very flexible and they're ready to try different things, right? So it's not very like, no, this is the way it is, we're not changing. They're very adaptable and they're there to help their employees as well as helping you grow in your career. So in the people and cultural, I was in charge of managing 6 interns in the company. So that was very new for me because it was like you get in there and you're just immediately challenged. You're out of your comfort zone and you're able to grow into different roles. And in terms of roles, you wear different hats in the company as well. So in tech, it's not just like, okay, you're an HR person. Sometimes you'll be helping marketing. Sometimes you'll be helping the engineering team. You have to be flexible and ready to wear many hats if you're going to go into the tech sphere of things. And you have to be someone who's ready to have structure, but also be flexible in terms of what you do in your role. It was really fun. There was a lot of events, a lot of virtual events, even though we couldn't meet in person. The team of interns that we had, everyone was local in Toronto. So I organized one dinner event when it was safe to do so with COVID restrictions. And we got together, we met at the office downtown Toronto. And it was a positive experience in the tech. And I don't think I would have wanted a different experience because of how relaxed it was. Everyone was my age mate. So that's something else to look forward to if you go in the tech. You'll find more people in your age bracket that can understand kind of your experience and where you come from. And yeah, Faith, how did I do?
You were great. Thank you so much. I can understand that as well. Working currently in a startup, more perhaps not in an HR role, but definitely you get pulled in many different areas as well, but support is needed. So definitely agree with being flexible. Especially as well, the company can change so much because I find with a startup, it's generally a lot smaller as well. So they can change with the market conditions much more easily than a more corporate organization, a bigger organization.
And to add to that, in terms of in the HR role, you'll find that you're doing less admin and more strategic HR responsibilities. So like policy writing, change management, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of the time I find too, you're kind of building, if you get the opportunity, perhaps you're kind of building probably more of like the infrastructure in a sense from the ground up, which is what I find as well. And you can quickly see again and switch from what works, what not. And I think your opinion doesn't get there's no like bureaucratic system. I find, I think your opinion gets taken not seriously, but gets heard more easily.
Yes, definitely. There's a lot of room to create and leave a mark wherever you go in a tech company, right? Because you're bringing ideas to the table and you're sharing, which in a corporate, I don't have experience fully in a corporate HR setting, but I feel like your idea will be sitting at a table for a while before it kind of gets to the top of the food chain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess the question, so because you've built some of these policies from the ground up, which are important, I guess, maybe in the tech industry that kind of has come up, or maybe you can share a bit of what you've worked on, perhaps. And I think this is kind of relevant to a lot of tech industries, whether it's like social media as well. And I think software as well. We have developed a policy as well in terms of like software, because in a tech company, right, you are using and you're leveraging a lot of resources that concerns technology.
Yeah. So some of the policies I worked on was kind of an expense policy, especially working remote. You have to kind of expense your laptop, a desk, and all these different things that you need to work with from home. So working on that and kind of making it more fit with the culture, which was really important in terms of not just like having a lot of red tape, but understanding the culture that you're working with in order to create a policy that fits that company. Because you can have all this jargon and the person that you give it to, they're going to be like, I don't understand what you're saying. So that was a really key learning when drafting policies, like understand the culture and kind of the people that work for the company in order to create something that you can explain and they'll understand so that they'll follow. So in terms, and then social media policy, those also, we're working on like harassment in the workplace, health and safety, especially with COVID. What else? Yeah, there was so many. I can't my brain is foggy, but
yeah, no problem. That's great that you touched upon all those. I feel it's very similar to, at the company I work with as well. I remember in the past you talked about developing policies, but they kind of have to be more like progressive, more proactive, rather than just like rules, laws or rule based. Do you think you can kind of talk about that again?
So in terms of like, with more red tape, I feel like it's more strict, but developing policies that are, what's the word? Easy to understand and less restrictive. I think it's kind of what the tech environment wants. They want like a family and they want you to feel comfortable. They don't want you to feel like, okay, you can't do, like, they don't want you to feel like, okay, no, you can't do this. But they want flexibility in order to allow people to be creative and express themselves without restricting them of being themselves, right? Because like you need a little bit of some rules in order to keep people in line, but you also don't want to put strict rules on people in order for them not to feel comfortable. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, it's more of like a positive spin in a sense, rather than don't do this, don't do that. More of like, oh, you can do this maybe instead, or I can't really think of an example off the top of my head, unfortunately, but yes. As well, you emphasize culture a lot, and I think culture is very important at a startup or a tech industry in general. What have you been a part of in terms of like engagement initiatives, or what have you spearheaded or been a part of that was kind of fun, or that you would kind of bring forward in a company in the future?
So in the company, just because I was part of the first group of interns, so kind of creating what the internship program will look like in the future. So creating kind of like weekly meetings to just sit and like like a cafeteria, but virtual cafeteria. So I created something like that with what is it called? Oh my goodness. There's an online platform where you can communicate. So creating a group so that the interns can kind of meet and like chat and just, it's not work, it's just you talking about what you did during the weekend, what you did in your work, like, do you need any help with anything? Just kind of creating a comfortable environment for people to feel excited to go to work. So for me, it was just like making the experience something that when you wake up and you have to log in, you're like, oh my goodness, I can't wait to go to work. And that's a feedback that I got from one of the interns where they said that I really look forward to these sessions. Like these sessions kind of make my week. And that was such great feedback to hear, because that's what I wanted, for someone to feel comfortable and they feel excited to come to these meetings and they don't feel like, oh my goodness, I have to clock in at 5 to go to this, internship gathering, right? So making it just a place to be comfortable, a place to be yourself, a place that's inclusive and not judgment free, essentially. I did some oh my goodness, I can't figure out the the platform that we use, but I created this space where like you could do oh my goodness, there's like games, so you can do trivia and all these stuff. So even during work, a trivia will pop up, and then like it's like a competition, so you compete, and at the end of the month, whoever got the most points would get like an Uber Eats gift card. So kind of making a space that is interactive, and even though we're virtual, because I guess everyone who's online has probably experienced being stuck behind a computer and you're just like, but then something pops up and you get excited and like, ooh, I want to enter this competition. I want to win that Uber Eats gift card. And yeah, I think, did I answer?
No, that's great. I think I can also touch upon that. At the current company I work with, we have an initiative coming up right now where it's like a bingo card we kind of fill up every week and we collect points. And a lot of it is filled with like, like mark it off if you've thanked someone, or if you've supported a local business, because I know that's that's kind of something we've emphasized during this whole time during the pandemic, to support local businesses. Additionally, maybe making dinner for someone. So that's kind of something that we've kind of started up in our company as well. And I also have to agree with the kind of the meetings to unwind a bit, because sometimes you get caught up in the work and you don't have enough time to just unwind and just engage with your team, because we are working in a remote environment after all. So just recently, even just taking maybe like 30 minutes out of your workday to just play Pictionary, like a Gartic phone. We use a Gartic phone. We played that before, or Sketch.io or anything like that is great, or Jackbox. It's really great to unwind, I find. All right, thank you. Thank you again for coming and attending and sharing your experience.
Thanks for having me.
It was perfect. And all the best moving forward. You're going to be a great addition to any team and any company, of course.
You too, Faith.
Thank you. Alrighty. I think that is it. Odette, do you have any questions for Gloria? As we're wrapping
Well, I guess this could be like for the two of you, because both of you went to the same college. So I was wondering if you guys recommended your program.
I'll let Faith answer first.
Honestly, I would recommend. I would actually recommend the school itself, because right now I'm working for a company that's kind of pushing this initiative of incorporating work integrated learning into schools. And I know that's kind of a bit lacking in a sense, depending what you're taking in school. It's a lot of theory, I find, and not a lot of like actual real world experience. I'm not sure, but I think a lot of us can relate to this unless we're in a more hands-on program like nursing or maybe engineering, or even in college like the trades or anything like that. So I really value that George Brown really invests now in that, because looking from the other perspective, working for this company, I see how much they've invested in the company and getting that work integrated or project-based learning opportunities in these courses. In regards to the program, it was a postgraduate, and I know, Gloria, you can agree, it was very fast-paced, and
It was busy.
yes, it was. I think at one point it was kind of like one kind of exam after the other.
Yeah.
There's no buffer or anything. But I guess that comes with the nature of school or post-secondary in general. Overall, I had fantastic professors. How about you, Gloria?
I don't want to say anything negative. I would say in terms of getting a co-op, I would make sure you do your work and not just rely on the school. In terms of the learning, I think it was really fast paced, but you in anything you get what you put in. So if you just slack and don't do your work, you won't get the full knowledge or understanding of the concepts, but you just have to put in the work. And yeah, I'd say I'd recommend it. And there's a lot of support within the school. So that's something that I found really nice about George Brown College. There's a lot of support, financial, with the HR team in terms of finding your internship. And actually, one of the counselors is the one that told me that I need to increase my value and not just apply to random jobs. And yeah, so I'd recommend George Brown for sure.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to hand the mic to Mohammed, and then we have a question after that.
Okay.
Hi there, guys. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Well, thank you. Sir, if you don't mind me asking quickly, before you venture out to partying tonight.
I was kidding. I'm just going to the kitchen.
You guys should enjoy it. Sounds like you had a very hectic year, and congrats on your internship and all. And thank you all for your time today. I just want to quickly ask, like, in terms of George Brown, are there any programs that you would like recommend that you guys might know of, like for tech per se? Like, I'm a beginner, and you know, I'm trying to self-study, and of course I don't have the funds necessarily right now to really go into traditional sort of education, but you know, if like let's say OSAP or anything like that came through, like, is there any specific program that you guys are aware of, like within the tech sphere, that George Brown is offering that might be good to apply for?
I don't know any, but I know that George Brown has a lot of financial aid. So if you needed like assistance with in terms of financial aid, they really have a lot of programs for that. In terms of programs, I only applied to the HR program, so I'm not familiar with all the other ones.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say, Mohammed, really look into the School of Computer Technology. Really, it's not limited to George Brown, although I do give George Brown a heads up in regards to, like Gloria said, the finances, even the healthcare plan and everything. The Student Association has been really great. But overall, what's in demand in the tech sphere, of course, like you mentioned, you're studying, where you're looking into programming. But I would say any program as well in a college, anything computer technology programming related. That being said, I would do your due diligence and try to research, of course, how many people have graduated, whether you want to take a 2-year or a 3-year program, and look into what kind of opportunities are presented, what kind of, if you're going to do an internship, maybe every second semester, third semester, it's a great way to network. We found it, of course. I think part of the reason we took this as well was the opportunity to get an internship or a co-op opportunity. As well, I can say having a portfolio you can speak of on GitHub is very important if you are going to delve into programming. And
to add, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, to add to that, if you have any background at all, I've heard that there's some accelerated programs that you can do in a short span, like 6 months or something.
Okay, and that's at George Brown?
No, like if you do your research online, there's some people who maybe had engineering and then they did a boot camp for 6 months and they got their credentials.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
It's just and from my brief sort of research, I guess, like I didn't find any programs that supported, like, offered financial aid for like boot camps. So that's where kind of like I stopped looking. But I only did that today. I was speaking with a friend earlier today. Yesterday. I believe she's also joined in the call today. And that she recommended that, so I took a quick peek, and it just seemed like they were not really offering financial aid, maybe because it's less than a year, and I think like OSAP has a requirement, like how long the program needs to be. Yeah, but no, I really appreciate your time and all the great info. It's definitely very, very beneficial for sure.
Yeah. If we find anything, I'm pretty sure we can share.
Yes, I would definitely, of course, all the information too is online. I know, maybe even joining. I Reddit can be kind of toxic, but going into this to the subreddits, a few specific ones. Additionally, there are school Discord. I don't know if you're on Discord. There's some Discord channels, probably school related. So a lot of research you can do on the internet to look into that. In regards to boot camps, they are pretty pricey, and I can understand why it wouldn't be covered because it's such a short span of time as well. If you definitely have the time, I would probably recommend going to a college if you do have the time, because again, you'll get more of the financial support, I find. But that being said, it could be a really great investment to do a boot camp if you don't have the time. I know of someone personally, my brother's friend, that did a boot camp, and it was very pricey. They're all pretty pricey, to be honest. But he was able to get a position. Additionally, once you're kind of into, it could be a bit challenging, maybe depending to network. Depending if you're doing like a delivery of a hackathon type thing, you'll have some people from those organizations maybe kind of see what you're presenting. So it's all about like who's attending and who's seeing your work. If you ever do get into a program like that, anything tech related, I definitely recommend joining hackathons. As a student, that opportunity is there. And that's more career related, of course.
Oh, that's awesome. Like, yeah, I mean, unlike you wonderful guys, I'm not young. I'm 48, so I have my back against the wall. But this is for my family. I'm just like really passionate about all of this, and just making sure that I do my best. And so like I will do whatever I need to do. I really want to get into the industry, but I know like it's going to be very, very hard, especially competing with so many young, awesome, talented people. But I really appreciate all the info, and hopefully this all leads somewhere. But thanks again. Even if it doesn't, there was like, for me, this session was amazing. So I really do appreciate all your time. Thanks again, guys. Okay. Take care. Good luck. Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, we also have a question from Rachel. So I'll show this. So Ontarians, what is your opinion on legislation banning non-compete clauses? Could this positively, negatively impact the tech industry in general and on the employer side? That's a very interesting question. I'm not sure if you guys could answer it.
No, that's actually a good question. Actually, if you've heard in the recent news, yes, honestly, it's kind of a sticky kind of situation because they have to provide it on the face value on the documents, but I don't know exactly if it's followed. There can be a bit of a gray area in regards to this. Will it positively or impact the tech industry? Honestly, yeah, that's a bit challenging of a question. Have you ever touched upon that, Gloria, when you've developed policies?
Is my mic still on? Oh, there you go. It's a yay and a nay, but my personal opinion is a company is just trying to protect its material because they don't, if I think I'm understanding it right, non-compete clauses banning you from competing and going with, like after you've been let go, sharing the information you gained from another company, correct? Is that okay? I think it's good because then it's a tough one because it can go either way.
I don't think it will. I don't think it will, just because I've seen it kind of in the back end of things, but kind of slipping in because they kind of have to write that in their policies.
Yeah.
But I don't see it as a huge issue. The tech industry is rather large as well. It's kind of booming and it's growing, and there's also many people switching from industry to not industry, but from particular company to company. So it really depends kind
And
of where
it's
you're
changing and
going.
evolving, right? Always changing and evolving. So it's kind of like one thing gets old and then we're on to the next. So I don't see a huge impact really. Right.
Yeah, definitely, because I think there are many aspects being built and that are different, trying to stand out in a sense. I know for myself, the industry or the company that I work in is very niche. So maybe there are different parts of it can be incorporated, but I think at the end of the day, it's more about the product side of things, what you're delivering. I know, I know for you, Gloria, what your company is doing is very niche as well.
Yeah, even though
right?
there's like competitors, there's like a huge part of it that makes it very different from the other people in the same, trying to make it in the same industry. So.
Exactly. So I think at the end of the day, it's about the product and itself, and I think it won't negatively impact, at least for startups, I would say.
And honestly, the culture, a lot of people base their company based on the culture. If the culture is very toxic, you'll see the company just dwindle, as opposed to if you have a positive work culture, more people will go to that company and you'll see that company blossom. I don't know. That's my 2 cents. So, yeah.
I hope that answers your question, Rachel.
I think so.
It's
Yeah.
very perspective. But, yeah. Is that it?
Yes. Odette, our next session with Chloe.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Gloria.
Well, thanks for
you,
having us.
Gloria.
I think we ran a little bit over there with the questions, but thank you again, and we'll continue on.
Hi, Chloe.
Hello.
So this session, Chloe will be talking about people of color in tech. So you can take it away, Chloe.
Okay, sounds good. checked my presentation, and I think all the images should load this time. Hopefully, fingers crossed. There's always technical difficulties, even when you're working in the tech industry. So welcome back to everybody who stuck around. So a little bit different. I'm actually going to touch more and talk more about myself for this second half and what it's like being a person of color working in tech. So here's my background. So who am I? I am a first-generation immigrant from China. I came here when I was about 7 years old. So I really grew up in Canada, but was able to embrace both cultures as I grew up. After I graduated from high school, I decided that I really wanted to move to Vancouver, move to a bigger city, because originally we were from a bigger city in China. So I wanted to re-embrace that big city girl life. So I enrolled myself in SFU, so Simon Fraser University, in the BE School of Business. And then as life happens, it took a turn for 2 years. So I transferred back to Saskatoon and transferred to the Edward School of Business and finished up my degree in a Bachelor of Commerce in Marketing. So a little bit of fun fact about myself, something I actually like to keep a secret, especially when you're working in the tech industry and you know how people are really into ping pong here, is that I was a former table tennis national team athlete and I represented Canada when I was younger. So I played competitively, but I try not to disclose this because why would you do that when you can reveal at a very crucial time, especially when there's prizes involved? So that's a little bit about my background. How did I get involved in tech? I think it was pretty much of a untraditional route. So I had just finished my last final of my undergrad and I was scrolling on Facebook and I came across a targeted job ad. It just said like program coordinator, technology incubator at Collabs. And I was like, okay, this seems like a really cool opportunity. So I took a screenshot of it and it was something that I bookmarked to come back to later because at that time it was right before bedtime, which is when I like to do my social media scroll. And then, so I guess a little bit background about like previous jobs I had prior to working here at Collab. So I had a variety of different jobs. I was really big on getting experiences. So serving, retail, restaurants, gas stations, bartending, you name it. I have pretty much done all of that except movie theaters. I've applied several times and they wouldn't take me. I don't know why. And it's still a mystery to me today, but I do enjoy a good movie. And I just didn't know what was a good fit. So I was open to kind of just culminating and collecting as many tools and putting them in my proverbial toolkit as possible to prepare me for when I do go into the real world. So what was the interview process like when I got to Collab? So right from the beginning, and now this has drastically changed since I took over people and culture, was I came in and I did a technical interview. So at the very beginning, it was this very different experience because as opposed to, you know, what they teach you in school, especially because I went to business school and I did enroll in a co-op program, was that they teach you that, you know, you have to know your situational questions. So when you get those questions, it was like, tell me about a time when you encountered conflict, like how did you deal with that, to those like behavioral questions is like, okay, you are now faced with you know, a communication error, like how are you going to resolve that? So I like had all of that memorized coming into the interview, but I realized very quickly that he didn't ask me any of those questions, and instead he was more interested about who I was as a person, and that was something I continued to take forward and implement into our own hiring process here at Collabs. And then after I talked to him, he kind of just, and this was pre-COVID to everybody who is watching, we sat in a boardroom and then we chatted and then he was like, awesome. And then he opened up a computer and he turned it around and he's like, you have 20 minutes to do this technical assignment. So I would just like hacked away at it and I didn't give too much thought, and then I gave it back to him and he said to me, okay, regardless of whether you'll be moving on or not, we will let you know by the end of the week. So that was kind of my first interaction of an interview in the tech industry. And then I did get a call back asking for a second and final interview with the executive director and the program director together. And then so I came in, and this is where we did the cultural interview, where we talked about like what it's like working at collabs, kind of hearing about my quirky experiences. And this is why it's really important that I even carry forward now is here in the tech industry, and I can't speak for every company out there, but particularly here in Saskatchewan and here at Collabs and all of the companies that are in our portfolio, is we're really big on culture. I know we might be small, and like, how do you differentiate when you're a small startup from those big corporations? Because you can't compete with wages, right? You're bootstrapped. They don't have a lot of money, but they can sell you on like a vision, and ultimately they want someone who is a grinder and someone who will stick it out and to be able to emerge victorious as the team continues to grow and scale. So now it's kind of more reversed. We, as the industry shifts, is everybody now does cultural check at the very beginning, because the worst part is that you've invested amounts like hours and hours into candidates, and then you figure that they're a crappy person and you can't work with them in a team. That's probably like the worst thing. So that's kind of how we adapt and learn. So that's that process is now changed. And for me, what I did was when I applied was I just said, why not? Like, just give it a try. I feel like that sometimes is all that it takes, right? And move on if it's not a fit. Don't be too kind of immersed in the idea. I know sometimes we all, like, especially our generation, is that we like to dream, right? We like to like hypothetically think about the conversations you guys have when you think about like, what would you do if you win the lottery? And then you kind of like go like, okay, I'm going to do this first, and then I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that. And then you kind of fall in love with the idea, but don't. If it doesn't work for you, then just move on. It's probably just not a fit. It's not you and it's not them. It's just you guys didn't have that connection together. So some statistics about the tech industry. Did you know that the tech industry, even today, is still predominantly male focused? So women only make up 28.8% of the tech workforce as of it's right now, but this has actually changed. Before, this used to be a lot smaller, and now companies are aiming for more of a 50-50 representation. So a little bit about background about here at Collabs. 30% of the companies that are in our portfolio, 30% of that are all female funded. So as you'll notice, I talk a lot about females in kind of the second half of the talk, because these are the underrepresented groups in the tech industry, along with people of color. So I think here at Collabs, we've been incredibly fortunate to have a lot of really strong women. So the fact that 30% of all of our founders are female focused, and they just came to us organically. We didn't have to do anything. So I know it was always really frustrating when we had to sit on these economic development calls, and governments and other agencies are asking like, what initiatives did you guys do to attract this many women in your program? And we've just been, it sounds like a humble brag, but we just have to say, like, you know, they just so organically happened. We've been very fortunate. We're trying to figure out like, how do we improve these numbers even more, because we're really big on striving and always continuously improving. And then, so like I mentioned at the beginning, we have 4 levels of program, and the second one is called Co-Launch, which is our 12-week accelerator program, where at the very end of it, there's a pitch event. Companies come and they pitch to a panel of judges, and they walk away with $20,000 of non-dilutive funding. So no strings attached. It's a check with your name on it, not even the company name, to say, here you go, congratulations for all of your hard work. And usually people put it towards company operations, but we have seen people just take it for other purposes, and that's totally fine too. You use the money however you feel like, because you earned it. And we're currently on cohort 8, so that wraps up at the end of December. But so far, out of the 7 cohorts we have, women founders have won 5 out of 7 of those. So it really shows just how accomplished and powerful it is for women. And it's not like they're just an underrepresented group. And that's just because that was traditionally how the industry has always been, but it is shifting. So what has changed since my time here at Collabs? There's been a lot of increased initiatives. for diversity and inclusion. So whether that's wanting to increase the number of females, whether that's wanting to increase the amount of people who are person of color or other diverse groups with disabilities, whatnot. So here at Collabs, what we do is I personally run an event called Ladies in Tech. So this is a pan-prairie focused event where we highlight women who are making an impact in the tech industry. So our last one that we did last week was focused on, I had a chance to look at some of the people who are on this call. So there's a company that's really big out of Calgary right now that you guys might know of. They're a fintech company called Neo Financial, and they've been really kind of at malls. I've seen their LinkedIn. They're basically just popping up everywhere. So we had the head of people and culture there as one of our speakers. We also had an angel investor who is a female, which is actually very rare because a lot of people who have old money all happen to be from oil and gas, and oil and gas also happens to be a predominantly male-dominated industry. So and she was one of the very early angel investors of Skip the Dishes. So she had a very compelling story to tell from that angle as well. And then the last person that we had on the panel, her name was Shelly Kuiper. So she had she co-funds and co-leads a women-centered fund called the 51. So the name of the 51 comes from 51% of the population is women, and primarily they're trying to disrupt the way that everything is done in the tech industry and focusing on women. So all the way from the beginning. So raising money from female investors. And then we have a team of female who are leading and managing that money and investing that in female funded companies. So it's they're based out of Calgary, so definitely something for you guys to check out if you want to learn a little bit more. They're doing a great job of disrupting and supporting women who are working in tech. Other industries that we have, I'm pretty sure there's some ones that are local to the region that you're currently in, but here in Saskatchewan, we have one called WESC, which is the Women Entrepreneurs Saskatchewan. So they do a roundtable discussion. Essentially, they're a little bit bigger than just tech, but they focus more on entrepreneurship, and they run a lot of different events, and it's a really great support system that they have for women who are working in the industry. I also sit on the board of a economic development organization here in Saskatoon. It's called the Saskatoon Open Door Society. They primarily help with new immigrants who are settling in Canada and helping them transition into their new life here in a new country. And then lastly, other initiatives that we have done is we do a lot of collaboration. We're here at Collabs, we're very big on collaboration. It's basically our name, right? Collabs. And we also support other groups who are working in the industry. So another one that we've done was Afrotech. So partnering with them and promoting their events. So there were a bunch of African entrepreneurs who were completely off our radar who had an event. So it was really great seeing like the different foods, the different perspectives, and the different people who were coming into our space. And we're just really big on collaboration here at Collabs. So how it's going since the last 3 years, the industry trend definitely changing. Companies are now focusing a lot on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So you'll see that term come up very often all the time. It's now been shortened to be called DEI. So focusing on these diverse groups, whether that's women, whether that's people of color, whether that's immigrants, and or whether that's people in LGBT, and making sure that the workplace is a very inclusive place and everybody can have and feel welcome in the organization has become increasingly important for all companies, especially in tech, just given that traditionally it's been a lot more skewed, right? You always had like a bunch of white men sitting at, whether they're investors or whether they're in leadership or whether they're leading companies and whatnot. So the tech industry has been incredibly progressive on trying to improve those numbers. And when you guys are applying for jobs too, a lot of companies actually ask this as well, say, our workplace is about 36% women, or they'll say like, we're very, very close to that 50% mark of women versus men. And all of those you can, I think is a great reflection of the initiatives that the companies are taking to address some of the trends that are changing. And I would say there's also been a lot of increased flexibility and support that is available. So whether that's the 51 with now there's a lot of funds that are created primarily only invest in women-led companies. I think there's like a lot of more opportunities for women and people of color. I know they're doing different other accelerators, or other companies are doing something similar, whether that's primarily focusing on people who are in the DEI category or whether they're women. I feel it's just very encouraging when I kind of represent both of those groups to see that there is work that is being done to achieve, going towards achieving more of that equity component. And then also with entrepreneurship as well, I feel like there's more women, like why not, right? Like of women being, whether that's starting their own company, whether that's stepping into leadership roles, or whether that's becoming a community leader. There's a lot of different opportunities. And we also see a lot of emerging support of organizations that are popping up. So like I mentioned with WESC, as well as with like Saskatoon Open Door Society, they do a lot of work in making sure that all immigrants and all people in these diverse groups are being catered to. So with that, I will just leave it here, and I'll open up to any questions anybody has.
Hi, Chloe. I'm actually supposed to be a host, so I don't know what's going on. Ariel. I was wondering about like, you know, when you're applying for a job and there's like the questionnaires at the end, and then kind of like part of the questionnaire is about like diversity. So they're like asking whether or not you're a woman, or like how you identify like racially and stuff like that. So I've had like mixed things about that. Like, so would you recommend filling that out or leaving it as like prefer not to answer kind of thing?
I feel like, I think it depends on how you feel, because what I do realize is you don't necessarily have to fill it out. It's optional. If you think that it'll increase your chances of getting your application kind of just like picked out from the pile, then fill it out. Or maybe I think the greater question is more focusing on like what exactly they're trying to achieve there, right? Like if you go to their website and you see they're like really big on this, and maybe they're like, for example, and they're hiring, they're like, okay, we have to fill this many spots with people who fit in that DEI category, maybe that's something for them to reference. But when I look at those, I kind of just feel like it just depends on a mood, right? I think everybody has a very different take because it's such a sensitive topic. It really just depends on how you feel. Or like if you are really incredibly passionate, it might be even worthwhile reaching out to them and be like, hey, what are you doing with this data? Or like, can you tell me about like the composition of your current workforce? Right? Because like, why are they asking them? I feel like you should question them too. And they always have like an email, and it's like, if you need like accommodations or not, like why not just reach out to them? Like if they don't have a good answer and you feel, then you don't want to work for them anyways.
Thank you so much.
Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions, and nobody has raised their hands.
Okay.
Faith, do you have a question?
I know there's some questions that Odette had sent me ahead of time that I didn't address in my presentation, so I can verbally do that now if that helps. Yeah. So the question that I got was, did you personally face a barrier in your career because of the color of your skin? And do you think we can come a long ways in representing all people of color in the tech workspace? So for the first one, I think it's very subjective about facing a barrier in their career. I've just been very fortunate that they just liked me who I was as a person. I didn't feel, objectified to say like, oh, we should hire that person because she is a female and she is a person of color, and that would make our workspace look really great. Like nobody had ever said that in the 3.5 years that I've worked here, and no one has ever been like, oh, look at her working hard because she's a person of color. It's just that I think like being in Canada, we've been very fortunate that it's very multicultural and we see a lot of different diverse groups here. I always personally feel a little bit conflicted when companies go and they like don't feel genuine when they talk about DEI initiatives because they're solely trying to just reach those numbers. And then all of the people, like you have to think about like how do people feel to say like, oh, I was hired not because of my skills, but because the color of my skin and or because of the gender that I am. So kind of like the companies, when they do that, like that is definitely a red flag to me. I think you should really, and I've talked to so many HR tech leaders because this is a topic that we all have to talk about, right? Like, what are we doing for DEI? How do we know, like, walking the fine lines of like what's considered like us trying too hard and what's like the benchmark that we should all kind of hold ourselves accountable to? And really at the end of the day, it's just focusing on, are these great people? Right? Like I've talked to so many organizations like NEO last week, and we asked her the same question. And she's like, don't get too caught up in the numbers. Like sometimes that might be a red flag too, is like if you see a company like we're proudly 50% women, it's like, okay, that's awesome. But are those people hired because of their skills, or are they because they're women or are people of color? And really just focusing on like if they're a good fit. So always going back to like the first part of my talk was, is there a culture fit? Do they align with our core values? Something that is pretty objective and not subjective. And then so you can always use that as well to say like, oh, that person doesn't fit in, not because like you can't like, then you say like, okay, because that person is a new immigrant and they're not going to fit into the whole like culture of the workspace. No. You have to just look to say like, oh, do they embrace all of these values that we have? If so, then like there's no reason for us to not hire that person. So I always personally say that at the end of the day, the barrier is it's about creating it for yourself. Sometimes it's a lot of it is like, oh, can I do it? And it's a lot of like self-confidence, but really if you don't try, then like, how do you know? Because the worst thing you can get if you try is a no, and then you just move on and eventually you'll get to that yes. And don't be too hurt by that no, because that might, at the end of the day, might not be the fit for you. So don't fall too much in love with any company. And we say that the same thing about entrepreneurship too. Don't fall too much in love with your idea because it might actually not work out. And then the second part of the question to say, do you think we come a long way in representing all people in tech? I would say we're progressively moving to a better world. I always love seeing that there's now more women in leadership positions in tech companies, which is really great because women, given that there's a lot of things to juggle, whether that's with motherhood or their personal lives and just the way that the industry is shaped, it's just really great seeing like more women rise up in ranks and being recognized for their skills, not because they're women, but just because their skills are being recognized. I feel that's incredibly powerful. So if people don't have any questions, my really takeaway at the very end is don't get too caught up in numbers. It's focus on who people are as individuals. And if they happen to be a person of color or happen to be female or be LGBT, then awesome, that's great too, because at the end of the day, we need a lot of diversity in this workspace in order for the company to gain more of a competitive advantage and to be more successful overall, because you have all of these different views that all of these different groups of people are bringing in. And then that way you can make your market more, I guess you could be more of a market leader too, because you cater to a greater reach of audience.
Thank you. We have one question here from Amber. So what was the technical part of the interview about?
Yes, so this technical interview, I see now as companies are moving more to a remote setting, and you don't get to have that face-to-face interaction, and sometimes people come off as false, or like not an exact representation of who they are as a person. So a technical assignment is really a great way for you to suss out their competencies and their skills. So here at CoLabs, the technical assignment is a direct reflection of the role that you would be, the role that you're applying for. And it's kind of like a sneak peek of like some of the things that you would do. So here at CoLabs right now, I can speak. So we're currently looking for a content marketing specialist. So in that assignment is really a realistic job preview of what you do. So we always ask for a graphic, we ask for some social media content, and then we ask for a very long like form of writing. So whether that's a press release or a blog post, and then based on that, we can use that to infer along with the culture interview that we do at the very beginning to see if this person is a good fit in terms of skills as well as culture fit before we move them to a final interview with a panel. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. I'll mark this as answer. Okay. It doesn't look like we have any other questions. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, Chloe. Thank you, Gloria. Yeah, I know it's a Friday, and I know that maybe some people want to leave, but yeah. So stay tuned from Career In the future, there'll definitely be more sessions. So if any of you are interested in other tech startup, Kenneth has a website. You can go online and put Career In Tech. So his website, you can see that he shows people that helps other startups and connects people to find jobs in startups. So it's a really good opportunity, and the tech industry is booming right now. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. And Chloe, sorry, you mentioned as well the partnerships or the kind of the initiatives with in terms of funding or getting that working opportunity. You brought Venture for Canada and other grants. So our program, or kind of why we're putting this on, is actually because we're part of the entrepreneurship. I don't know if you've heard of it. Probably. It's provides a certain hours to full-time Canadian citizens, students enrolled in a Canadian institution, and it provides them that opportunity again to get that kind of work integrated learning experience, and then at the end, well, also to kind of network, get that opportunity to network and apply your skills. So that's kind of an initiative that has also helped in getting that experience. And this is why we're running this kind of event, essentially. And Career In is part of that, in helping to push kind of that initiative to get more careers, more, because as everyone has said here and mentioned, it's very booming right now. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in as well.
Yeah, awesome. I think you guys this is a great platform, and Venture for Canada is a really awesome program that we have used here at CoLabs, as well as a lot of our companies have used, to help subsidize the wages for people and to give those people a sneak peek and an opportunity to get their foot in the door in the tech industry. Oh, sorry, that was I posted in the wrong part. I was supposed to post that in the chat, but I posted that in the Q&A.
No worries, it's a great way to advertise. And we, again, really appreciate your time.
Looks like this question just came up. I think this is the last question. So, do you think there are opportunities for development for HRIs or tech related to HR?
I think so. We have a company in our program who is working on sentimental analytics. So similar to an HRIS, it's kind of like a API that integrates into an HRIS. So collecting some of that information. So I know that Gloria had mentioned earlier. So Slack is one of the primary communication tools that a lot of tech companies use. And it's to communicate with one another. And then so there's tons of opportunities there to analyze like the way that messages are being sent, and to create more of that equity and diversity and inclusion part. So one of the companies, her name is called Vise Labs, is they will integrate and they'll be able to look at some of the sentiments that are being sent. So for example, are you replying to your female coworkers a lot more slower than your male coworkers, right? And kind of having some of that quantitative, or it could also do other things like reminding people. So for example, there was a term that was used, and I don't remember what exactly it was, but in the way that it's used in popular culture is actually not the correct definition. So in case you had used that term with somebody else, they might interpret that way differently and actually has a more kind of like sexualized like kind of content to it. And then so like their platform will also be able to remind you to say, hey, you use this terms, but did you know it had a few different meanings? So please like watch out for that to make sure that everybody feels safe and it feels like they're in a safe and working environment. Like there's a ton of opportunities in this because HR is very like there's so many different facets of HR, and one of them is looking at analytics. So you actually see that's actually now separated. When you see like some like HR analyst roles, that's more looking at like the data. So they collect a lot of data, whether that's qualitative or quantitative, trying to just assess like how do employees feel? How do we make them feel better? How do we make the workspace more inclusive? So there are different opportunities that are available in HR. I feel like in the HRIS space, for those that are not familiar, that stands for Human Resource Information System. So you get to see a lot of that happening. They're very, very diverse in what they do. So they can collect employment, like engagement surveys. They can also administer payroll. They can also be a tool for you to use to keep track of like what is the organization structure. You can even come in and look, and you can like, if you work in a bigger organization, it might be worthwhile looking at the org chart to say like, oh, like, you know, there's different departments here, like who are some of the leaders I should be aware of, or even understanding, for example, like how many people are working the same position as you, because that you can reach out to that person. You could be you can build a community of support or mentorship or whatever it may be, and then you can also keep track of things like vacation time, and you can document a lot of like your benefits and whatnot. So HRIS is very diverse. So there's tons of opportunities that are available for any of that. And I would just say, you know, HR is if that's something you're interested in pursuing, then definitely go for it. Like Gloria mentioned, no day is really alike when you're working in tech. So like she mentioned, if you might be doing some days you might be doing a lot of analytics, some days you might be doing more strategic stuff. And it's just a great way to learn a lot, especially when you get out of school. And then from there, you can, if that turns out to be a fit, then go for that direction. If not, you can always pursue something else. That's fine too. The journey, the beauty of life is that we're constantly learning, and you shouldn't stop.
Thank you again.
I see a comment from Rachel. Yeah, if you're interested in like HR and you're looking to make the switch after you get out of school, there's also similar to like an accounting designation. You can get one for HR too as well. But working in the tech industry and considering a lot of people are doing not what they went to school for, you don't technically need to get a designation for that in order to enter the field. You just have to show them that you're very interested and you're passionate about learning more.
Okay, well, if there are no other questions, I think that pretty sums up our online session for today. So thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you. And a big round to our speakers. Chloe, thank you for delivering second portion, of course. Both portions were excellent. You had an overwhelmingly amount of information provided. And I definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure others likewise. Great. And of course, if you'd like to know more or connect with Kenneth as well, I think he threw his LinkedIn into the chat. Feel free to connect with him. He's part of great initiatives, all related to tech startups. For example, he is trying to get funding for a lot of startups, and that's kind of one of his roles as well. So definitely touch base with him if you have any further questions as well. I'm sure he would be great to talk to in regards to any of that. Right. Thank you, everyone. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening. I'm sure we're across many time zones here.